Yay! I'm glad you looked at me.
I wasn't ready.
No, you weren't. It was.
But I love yelling at you.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 213. Welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us. Great show tonight. This is a topic that I've wanted to cover on the show for, as long as I've been alive.
Which is
21
years.
Thank you. Thank you for the truth. No, it's been a long time. It's basically dealing with the mental side of running. Last week, I had a bit of a conversation with the live audience about a struggle that I went through recently. I'll talk more about it in the main show, but I wanted to dedicate a show to how to get over those mental hurdles. You show up to a race, you're nervous, you have doubts. How do you start? How do you finish? What are the tools that maybe you can use to get through these events or sign up for a first race and like set those goals for yourself? So we've gotten a lot of questions from viewers over the last few months about how we deal with that. And I thought there would be no better guest to bring on than David and Megan Roche, who are fantastic coaches, just really great people. They have a book that's coming out that deals a lot with some of this. And they've been helping me get through my tough moments in very recent memory, the last year. I thought it would be a great conversation for a show because I know a lot of our live viewers have these sorts of questions.
Yes.
So we have David and Megan Roche on tonight's show, and I'm very excited.
We also have a furry friend.
We have a furry friend also joining us on the show tonight. You will see in just a couple of moments. But grab your beverage of choice, sit back, relax, get ready for Ginger Runner Live, episode number 213. Show begins now. Ginger Runner. Yay! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 213. My name is Ethan Newberry, also known as the Ginger Runner. And of course, I'm joined by the lovely
Kim Tashim Newberry.
That's incorrect.
Oh.
No, she was correct. That is her name. Sorry.
That's true.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
As always, you guys, we are live, as you can tell by how smooth the show is going.
Butter.
Every week, I am in the chat room. So if you guys have questions for our guest, please pop them into the chat room. We'll be pulling them throughout the hour.
Yeah. Tonight's episode will feature two wonderful human beings who are quite experienced in the realm of coaching athletes of all abilities through all distances and race difficulties and that sort of thing. But they also have a book that's coming out soon that deals with a lot of what we're going to talk about today, which is overcoming the mental hurdles, things that get in your way up here and here, getting the distances done, getting the job done, getting the training done. So I have questions. I know the live viewers will definitely have questions for tonight. So David and Megan Roche are joining us on tonight's show, and I'm very excited to have them. It's an honor to have them.
Yes.
And they're always so helpful and wonderful. And they also have a wonderful furry friend who will be joining us maybe a little bit on tonight's show. But before we introduce our guests, we have some people to thank. Every week we do Ginger Runner Live. We do this live show. We bring on guests from around the globe, amazing athletes, coaches, individuals of all abilities, and we get to chat with them. And it is all brought to you because of the support of the Patreon supporters, those who on a monthly basis support the channel for as little as $1 a month. So thank you to the Patreon supporters, 3 individuals in particular who are at that top tier, who week after week have just viewed, tuned in, been a part of the chat room, part of this community, wonderful humans. So first of all, Chris Lee from Hong Kong does a wonderful job bringing the community together in Hong Kong through an organization called Trailblazer. They very recently raised $10,000 for charity with the screening of Where Dreams Go to Die. It was a really cool event, and we have
Again.
I don't. It's just because it's sitting here, but we have a giant movie poster with Gary Robbins' face on it to prove that they did this screening. It was really neat.
It's large.
It is quite large. So thank you, Chris, and to your community in Hong Kong. Rick Bjarnason and his team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca. They're a web design company, but Rick is an ultra runner, and I believe some of his other staff members are also ultra runners. But Rick's currently in the heat of training for Sinister 7 and Fat Dog 120. He's a fantastic ultra runner and also a website designer. They are redoing the gingerrunner.com website, and they're in the deep part of it now. Basically, the design has been approved, the layouts have been approved, so now they're fleshing out the website. That's a terrible adjective, but verb, that's what they're doing. So big shout out to Rick and his team. They're doing an incredible job. Finally, Brian Sands, who's currently on vacation, enjoying the trails
so
in Hawaii. Yeah, his pictures are fantastic. But Brian's been a longtime member of the community, wonderful human, And he trained and ran his first marathon in October, currently training for his first 50K.
Yep.
We've been talking about him on the beginning of every episode here, saying the same sort of thing. We can't wait to update you with the results of his first 50K because he's just crushing right now. He's doing some incredible things, distances and terrain and altitude and all that sort of stuff. It's really cool to follow along. So I doubt he's in the chat room tonight because he's probably enjoying the vacation with his family.
I hope he is.
I hope. And the internet in Hawaii, we have found, is not the greatest.
That great.
So thank you to those three individuals and thank you to all the Patreon supporters. Let's get into the show.
Shall we?
Sure. Without further ado, we have two guests. Let's make it three to introduce. They are back joining us on Ginger Runner Live. They're great human beings. Without further ado, my God, my mouse must be dying because it's certainly going slow. I got to get over here. God, it's dying in real time.
This is our first live show, you guys.
It is. David and Megan Roche.
Yay!
Yay!
And Addie.
And Addie. So I think we got a brief peek at who Addie is on a previous episode, but for those who maybe are unfamiliar, who is this adorable pup?
She's the head coach of our coaching team. She's the one that writes in all caps. So our athletes all know the one that writes in all caps, which is most of the things, and exclamation points. So
and she's 6 years old, but still a puppy.
Yeah. So she's a master. She's a master's athlete, but is getting stronger every day.
And she's really good for mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's. Go ahead. Sorry.
She doesn't care how we do in races, so it's a good reminder, a good grounding.
How long have you had her?
Since she was just a few weeks old. The crazy story, actually, for those that don't know it, we were just driving in rural North Carolina. Never had a dog in our lives, so we weren't. I mean, it sounds crazy now, and it's almost like I should be wearing a big scarlet letter on my chest. But wasn't really a dog person back then.
Well, we just like they would jump us on.
Yeah. I grew up with a lot of junkyard dogs around me, so I was a little skeptical. And there was a sign on the side of the road that said "Free Pups" in all caps in this little 150-person town called Walnut Cove, North Carolina. And Megan had to pee because Megan always has to pee. And we're like, what better place to pee than the place with the free puppies? So, Addie was in the back, like saying hi to every gust of wind.
No, she was in the front saying hi to everyone and everything and would not let us go.
Then we've had her since. And she's been in like 30 states and met probably half the people that are watching the show right now at different races and events and things. So, she's our better third, I guess is what you could say.
She's wonderful, absolutely beautiful pup, and I know that it was a couple episodes that we had you guys on a while back where Megan, I believe you had to take care of Addie while David was racing.
Yes, she accidentally got a leave, which is actually pretty dangerous for dogs.
Ugh.
But she's been good ever since. So
she also has a nose for marijuana.
Which is a problem in Colorado.
Yeah, so we're new Colorado residents, and the big problem is sometimes, the new legalization laws. Sometimes you find it finds its way into the bushes, apparently. And so she's had a few very funny vet visits where they think we're really bad dog owners, which, to be fair, maybe. But.
Why do you guys keep feeding her snacks? Like, why is she eating snacks all the time and, like, super chill? What a weird collie. Well, it's great to have you guys on, all three of you. You just mentioned that you did relocate to Boulder. So let's start there before we get into the real heart of the topic of tonight's show. How was the move? What was the reasoning behind the move? And where are you now? Because this is not the torture basement that we had you guys broadcasting from last time.
No, so I guess the first night we met, we actually talked about moving to Boulder.
Megan had never been, and I was a total creeper. And our ice cream date, and was like, do you want to come out to Colorado next summer?
No, David was like, I have this little cabin in Netherlands, and we should go stay there on the first night of our date, which was really creepy in retrospect.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I didn't exactly. I'm not exactly. I mean, you guys can probably tell already, but I'm not really the best at playing it cool. It's not really my skill set. And so then we ended up. The prophecy came true, as if it's like Lord of the Rings or something. We ended up getting to Boulder that summer, got there every summer since, and then after Megan's graduating from med school at Stanford, and we just put all of our worldly possessions, which is basically a dog, some clothes, and some shoes, into a Subaru and drove out to Boulder, and like without a place to go, and then staying in a rental and have like we're setting up our coaching headquarters there as of 2 weeks from now.
That's amazing.
Somehow, like we have a lot of athletes we coach there, and some great athletes and good people.
Like Mako, Claire, Kat,
and
Addie,
good dogs
Gavin.
too.
Yeah.
There's like a good. I feel like the Colorado dogs are really good. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's absolutely a reason to move somewhere.
Yeah, like weather and mountains, cool, but dogs were there.
Well, it's a reflection on the people. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, what was I just gonna say? I had the greatest thought ever, and it passed through my brain. I'm sorry, I cannot grace the world with the amazing
that's the end
thought.
of the live show.
Yeah, because now I'm going to remember what the thought was, and it's totally not even great. Okay, well, congratulations on the move. It's awesome to hear. I don't remember what I was going to ask, and it's not that amazing, but I am curious about this. You're both extremely well educated. You both have degrees in, I believe it's law and medicine. Is coaching going to be the full-time thing, or like, do you have to supplement with being a doctor or a lawyer? Like, how does that work?
That is an amazing thought, and I'm glad you know.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
You thought something.
I got through my mental block there. It's perfect.
That's like such a good question. I mean, for me, I'm fully invested long term, and Megan making the leap has been really helpful in that process for me.
Yeah. I'm coming up on the process of applying to residency, so David is being very persuasive in his thoughts of full-time coaching.
She's like the best coach ever, as many of the listeners could.
I would still coach in residency, but
yeah, she couldn't just do it. She couldn't do it for as substantially as I hope she will. But yeah, so we're like, and then after residency, she would come back and do swaps. So it would just be a way to give her more expertise for the athletes that she is able to reach. So. Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like it's a much more obvious decision for a lawyer because, lawyer. So yeah, we're a running coach. That's not to insult lawyers. That's just saying I was a terrible lawyer. I was one of the worst. So it was an upward move.
David doesn't love confrontation, which makes being a lawyer very tough.
Yeah, it's like you win. You win.
I feel like I would love to be on a jury with David as one of the lawyers. Like, you would just be the nicest conversation ever. How's the jury doing today? You guys good? Listen, jury.
I brought my dog here today.
This is my dog. You can do anything.
Well, David's life philosophy is like unconditional support, which doesn't really fly in the lawyer profession.
I love looking at Addie because her eyes are very dark, but every once in a while you can see the whites of her eyes.
Yeah.
It's really cute. Okay, let's start getting into the meat and potatoes here because
before we get into the meat and potato.
Should we get into the appetizer?
Yes.
Okay.
No. I was just going to say that Brian Sands is actually in the chat room tonight.
From Hawaii, Brian.
He's a swap athlete too, so hello, Brian.
He should be eating poke and relaxing on the beach right now with a Mai Tai.
Maybe he is.
Who knows? Shout out to Brian. What's up, man? Before we get into it, of course, live chat room as well. Kim is pulling some questions already. We've got a handful of questions aside. Tonight's topic, let's get into it. So both of you guys coach a number of athletes, all abilities, all levels. I'm sure you get this question a lot, but let's say I'm running my first 50-miler, first 100-miler. I'm scared out of my mind. It's 2 months away. I don't think I can do this. This is what you're being told by your athlete. How do you coach an athlete through this? This is probably one of the most common doubts that your runners will face. Any distance, by the way. What do you tell them?
I think the first step in this entire process is to think about what it actually means to be a runner and what it means to reach finish lines. So, our book started with this exact question. It's not out for a while, but and what we wanted to do at the start of the book was like really make it clear that finish lines do not define your worth whatsoever. And so the first line of the book is super melodramatic. It's every runner has the same finish line, death. And then it starts making jokes about like how ridiculous it is to make that statement. But the point is that as a runner, especially if you're a first runner, you're going to have so many different finish lines that come and go, and you're going to have great days and bad days. and they're all just checkpoints in a longer process. So if the results get elevated above the process of being a runner and being a human, then you're gonna end up setting yourself in a place where you have conditional self-worth, where it's like, well, I'm only enough if I reach this finish line or if I do well at this race. And all runners know that doesn't get satisfied a lot. And especially if you do this for a long time, especially if you want to do this as you're aging. And so, yeah, we talk to everyone and we're like, I mean, sometimes we're really explicit. We're like, as coaches, we don't give a crap about your race results. Like that's a means to, fulfillment and all these uplifting things, but it's never going to bring happiness.
Also, too, there's just that it's totally normal. I think everyone from a recreational runner to professional runner goes through these thoughts, whether it's 2 months out for a race, the night out before a race, am I ready for this? Can I do this? And it's just part of the process of being a runner. And it's actually part of what makes running so rewarding, is because if we all had this great confidence that we could go in and perform well, you probably wouldn't have the same endorphins and the same joy that you get from finishing a race.
That's an interesting commonality that we've discussed on the show a couple of times, but I'm sure as coaches you see it on a more regular basis. But just the difference between, or I guess the similarities between elite runners who you coach and everyday runners, weekend warriors that you coach. Is there a way for us to recognize that everyone deals with the same thing? Because, elites are so... I don't see it often. Elites, I feel like, are less likely to talk about going in, like say they're going into UTMB and they're expected to do well, or there's all these additional expectations. You're not going to see them go online and be like, oh man, I'm doubting my ability to do this and do that. It's a lot of that. Can't wait to do this, can't wait to do that. But maybe they are dealing with the doubt. Is there a way for that to be okay, like to normalize it, where elites can feel like they can communicate these sorts of things? Do they communicate these sorts of things to you as coaches? Obviously you can't divulge some stuff, but is this normal?
We see it all across the training logs, from recreational athletes to professional athletes to elite athletes. And I think it's becoming more of an open space for elite athletes to talk about it. I think people have really paved the way. Amelia Boone being one of them. She's been so open. She had a few injuries 2 years ago, and she's been very open on her journey back to racing. And I think that's inspired others to do the same.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. It's hard in some ways for, like, let's say professional athletes or elite athletes to be really open about this, for the same reason that you don't see, like, let's say professional football players or professional basketball players saying the same thing. Like this year, a really interesting story was Kevin Love, a forward for the Cleveland Cavaliers, had a severe anxiety attack during a game, a panic attack essentially. And, it made him confront a lot of these thoughts that he wasn't really being open to. And he wrote these amazing essays on his experience. And it really opened the door for other basketball players to be open about this, because it's hard in elite athletics, because that aura of invincibility is kind of important to performance to some. So I think as the door starts getting opened by people like Amelia, and hopefully we can play a role in that too. I mean, gosh, like before our big races, we're not like, we don't hold it all together. And so, but that's like, I think reframing it is really important, that is part of the beauty of the sport and beauty of this endeavor in general. Like, I mean, the way to avoid that altogether is to never leave the house. And what makes this sport so great is you get to leave the house and you get to fail, and you get to have all of life's experiences boiled down into this little morsel that you can like chew and spit out, and it doesn't really matter in the end. Like, nothing changes either way.
And it's just a proxy for life too. Like if you're going out and running a 50-mile race, it makes other things seem easy too. Whether it's, a job presentation or school or anything like that, the same principles apply to everything.
We actually have Amelia in the chat room, and she says they all doubt, just very few own it. And that I believe. I believe that ultra elites and elites of all disciplines, I guess, they probably deal with those mental blocks, and some of them just don't own it. They just don't talk about it. I wonder what's healthier.
But that also, that's the era of the social media we're living in right now, though, too, right?
Yeah. Again, we are live. We do have live questions. Kim's already pulled a couple aside. What do we got, babe?
Yeah, there's a question from Nathaniel in the chat room. Nathaniel asks, question for the coaches. It appears you emphasize positive reinforcement. Do you ever get an athlete who is motivated by negative reinforcement?
That's an amazing question.
Addie is like a perfect example too, as she's sitting here with like
I mean, we're also aware of our shortcomings, let's say. Like, I know my shortcoming, and Megan's too, I think, to a certain extent. I don't want to, like, she's better than me, is I'm never going to yell at someone about running. Like, it just doesn't matter enough to me. Like, I might yell at them if they, like, I don't know. I don't think there's any situation where I would ever, want to introduce negativity into someone's life, even if it would motivate them to be a better runner, because like we don't need negativity. So what we've done is in the beginning, like we're really upfront about that, and we're like, this is not for everyone. The approach that we have, if that's not for you, we totally get it. And we're not saying it's your flaw. It could be my flaw or Megan's flaw.
Well, I also think you're very honest too. So when positivity comes with honesty, it's a little bit easier. It's not necessarily negative reinforcement. It's more being honest and being positive.
Yeah. So like our athletes know we'll call them out, but we'll do it and then tell them that they're awesome, like at the end. But we're not going to sugarcoat stuff, because like what you learn as a coach or any profession, is as soon as you're not trustworthy, as soon as that trust is broken in any way, you lose all credibility. So an athlete needs me to tell them that, yeah, that was a little like an underperformance, but then like go into the other things that make it so that it doesn't really matter. And that they're still amazing and all these other things. But yeah, it's important to like be honest in every social interaction, because it's all a relationship, right? Like with your significant other, like, you don't want them searching through your phone. There needs to be a trust there. So, but that's an amazing question, Nathaniel.
Yeah, there's lots of talk about, comparing yourself to others and that sort of thing. How do you have any tools or tricks? I imagine you get this question a lot from some of your athletes of like, oh, I saw this person do this weekend. I wasn't able to achieve the same thing or the same time or the same speed. And, I'm really down on myself because of that. How can we help ourselves not get caught up in the fear of missing out or the comparative?
Or comparison, yeah. Like, for example, Lake Sonoma, right after Lake Sonoma when I ran it, I saw all these other people that I knew also ran it were running races like immediately and big stuff and doing this and that. And I was kind of like, oh, I feel like I feel lazy and I feel like I'm not bouncing back. And it's really easy to get down on yourself or start comparing yourself to what else is out there.
Yeah. What tools?
I think it's similar to meditation. So as soon as the thought comes into your head that it's a thought of comparison or a thought of judgment, is that you recognize it and you pause for a second and you just kind of discard it. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is just stopping and recognizing it's okay for the thoughts to happen, but recognizing when they do happen and then kind of evaluating that and moving on.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And then like the really small things that you can do on your daily run is, one, if you use a GPS watch, take distance off there entirely, and just have it say time, have it be like an old analog watch. Two, unless like Strava or something like that is a really productive exercise for you, for a lot of people it's just not. And it's okay to opt out of that stuff. Like, doesn't change anything. And then in terms of the broader, like when you're comparing, let's say comparing to others, which is also human nature, you can't avoid it. We think it's essential to reframe the community. Like, so a good example is like, most people will cheer on their family to the max. Like, the successes of their significant other are their own successes. They get great joy out of it. They don't do the comparison game quite as much. But it's your choice to do that with the whole running community. So our thing is, who's in your running family? The answer is, if it's everyone, then a lot of that comparison game becomes like you're rooting for the people rather than, being like, oh, well, am I not matching up to that? I think the bigger risk in some ways is comparison to yourself, especially for runners that have been in the game for a while.
Totally guilty of it, yeah.
And we're all of us are destined to get significantly slower and like a kind of like somewhat linear trajectory until we die. And accepting that process now is really important, because otherwise you're just kicking the can down the road for hating yourself, essentially.
And also kind of accepting social media for what it's worth too. I think it can be a very positive outlet and something that's interesting and rewarding, but just taking it with a grain of salt and understanding what you see on there isn't always the case. But that doesn't mean you don't have to use it. It just means kind of understanding what you're getting.
And it doesn't mean you don't have to trust everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Some of it's
great. Yeah.
But then a lot of it, like, as coaches, we get to see the really intimate lives sometimes behind the scenes. And, it's not always an analogy I used recently when someone asked was like, it's like the difference between, let's say, a World War II movie versus actually living in the trenches during World War II. So like one is like this glossed over, like everyone can watch it. It's not, it's pretty easy version. And then the others can be so intense and visceral and difficult to go through. And, if there's anything coaching has taught us, it's that running and mental health are so intertwined. And it all gets back to this question. And all of us deal with our own mental health issues, whether they're diagnosed or not. It's just different on different parts of the spectrum. So that opens up a whole new can of worms.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm in my mind, I'm also thinking while you're talking, just relating it to very similar experiences that I've had. Like for me, we talked about it on the show last week, but it's a moment that I remember just most recently of being at the start line of an event. It was going to be a marathon for me, and I mentioned it at the beginning of the show too, and realizing I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to run the race, and luckily this race did have other options. I could downgrade the distance. I could change to whatever distance I wanted. I could upgrade if I wanted as well. But it happened almost immediately before the race. I was like, I just don't want to do this. I had no desire. Like there was no, in my mind, I knew I needed the training miles, but that wasn't enough to get me to start it. So I did downgrade to another event, and I honestly didn't have a great time. I just didn't enjoy what was a perfect, beautiful trail race. I just was so mad at myself for not running what I originally had signed up for. So this is something that I just dealt with. In this case, how can I not let that? And I know a lot of our viewers have probably had bad race experiences or bad moments at a particular event. How can we not let that moment influence future moments? So how can I either use that as a positive, or like, are there things that I can do to trick my brain, or because I'm like, I still hate that I didn't run the full distance, but I don't think I would have had fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think one, it was you've handled it amazingly, and I love that you're talking about it. But those that know like our general approach know that we talk a lot about puppies and unicorns and things like that. But the thing we don't talk about that much publicly, though we do a lot with the people we coach, is that puppies and unicorns can get like depressed or anxious or go through downtimes too. It doesn't mean that you're like relentlessly positive and excited about everything. It means like, you have these aspirations to be enthusiastic and find the things you can out of life while you're here. But to accept that that's not like probably the nature, and especially for some of our brains, and running is the ultimate head game that happens inside your brain. And to accept that, because the problem is like, unfortunately, Ethan, this is going to happen again. It's not going to happen in the next race, but maybe 5 years from now, it's going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to all of us. I've gotten to start lines, and I mean, gosh, I raced on Saturday or Sunday. On Saturday night, I said to Megan, can we just drive? I don't want to do this. Can
we go to the mountains instead?
And I mean, yeah. And Megan's like, no, it's fine. But my point is like, and it was just a low key, like, I mean, it was no different than the training run I would have done that day. And the difference is getting from the point of being like, oh, I need to prevent this from happening, to be like, oh, it's actually okay when this happens, and just having the tools to handle these things when it does. The first and the most important, and I'll end it there, is self-acceptance and working to making your self-acceptance unconditional. Because I mean, the big thing in life is that if your self-acceptance or self-worth has conditions on it, like you're gonna fail unless you're an egomaniac or a narcissist, or just like maybe a puppy. I think puppies got it down. So the point is getting to a place where like you have this framework where you're not. It's not like, well, if I do this race, I am enough, or if I do the merit or whatever. It's just kind of like, oh, I'm enough. And I might do this race. I might fail really comically, but that just adds to the story.
I was just going to say, yeah, I feel like failure is just part of the larger life story. And then even worse, failure just makes it eventually, with time, funnier in the end. And so just being able to share your story is something that is really positive out of the whole situation, too.
Yeah, I guess one of our favorite stories of our failure is they have the U.S. Trail Marathon Championships in Moab. And this was like when we were, and this was also kind of when we were trying to establish ourselves, like both as coaches and athletes, which were intertwined back then. Now coaching is like totally separate and it's like at the top level. But so we went there and we had big dreams, and
well, what David didn't tell you is that he DNF'd there a year before and totally forgot about the whole experience. He was like, it was great. We should go back.
Yeah.
We should do it again.
So we get like, what happened in your race?
Well, I dropped. I went from like first place to 28th place within 2 miles. I was just lost like on these slick rock trails. And the same thing happened to David.
Oh yeah. I was like just in the middle of nowhere. I had no idea where I was. I was like, this is impossible. I think it's an impossible sport. But now it's like one of our favorite stories.
We tell it all the time. We're like,
yeah.
we DNF'd the same race.
Yeah,
After David DNF'd it the year before.
and really, in like kind of like embarrassing fashion, where we were just like broken down and like on the side of the trail. So I mean,
but it was really tragic at the time. I probuld cried for like 2 hours.
And that's the thing. Yeah. Like we didn't right then.
Yeah. I was literally just like crying on the slick rock.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean that you don't get upset about it or whatever. Right. It's that you develop tools to contextualize it, which usually can't happen inside your own 2 ears for most people, because like the world inside your own 2 ears is like extremely claustrophobic for many. So it's important to talk about it. I mean, I think the best therapy is you talking here or to a therapist or to Kim or to me. And we all go through that stuff. I mean, and I think that's one of the main things I try to do as a coach, and we try to do, is to convey to athletes that everyone is dealing with this crap, and just some people like are maybe more naturally like genetically equipped to have it not get to them, but most runners are feeling the same things.
Awesome. Again, live, lots of questions. Kim?
Amelia Boone in the chat room has a comment, and I have a question to dovetail onto that. Amelia says, love this. Really wish we could get rid of the stigma of DNFs as well. And on that comment, Nathaniel asked a question for the Roaches. Racing or in life, what is the best way to approach disappointment?
A beer.
That's a hug-worthy joke. It's true though, right? Like,
yeah, it is true. Yeah.
I mean, not just beer, but like understanding the rich tapestry of life goes so far beyond any little thing that you derive your identity from. And like really thinking about that. But so like, let's say with races, that's the best time. Like, I mean, a number of people that are listening have probably seen the email I send them to our athletes before the race, and Megan sends a very similar one. And it's like, it gets back to the universal context. We are stardust with delusions of grandeur. Like the only goal in this race is to make memories and add a little bit of like meaning to your life. And honestly, the failures are and the disappointments. I mean, everyone listening to this it's cliche. They could trace a disappointment back to their ultimate success or their ultimate, happiness. And I guess the ultimate, nirvana is realizing that disappointment and success are the same thing. Like that's kind of what all of, and with running, it really is the same thing. And it can become part of that, so you just had a pretty severe foot injury.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a relevant story.
And it's been actually the best 9 weeks of my life, even though I've had this terrible injury. And initially it was really disappointing. I went through this whole stage of like, what if I went to Margarita night? What if I, didn't do that long run that day on the day I broke my foot? And ultimately, it's just been a great opportunity for growing. And I think that's what disappointment is. And if you look back in time, the things that were super disappointing in the moment seem to fade often. It's like, I think about my greatest disappointments and now I just laugh at them. And it's like, that was such a small little blip.
I'm so glad I was not good with women. So I met Megan. But no, I mean, like
we can count, all this.
Like, I'm so glad that I didn't get the jobs that I interviewed for out of law school. Like my life would have been so different had that happened, and it would have been so much worse. And and it's like even if you don't have that like alternative universe, it's all part of like a choose your own adventure book that ends, it all ends in the same place. And so we're just kind of,
it all ends in beer.
It all ends in beer.
Yeah, the first and the last answer, yeah.
Exactly.
What would you tell someone? So this is probably something that will pop up. What would you tell someone who has run a half marathon, has run a marathon, is thinking about dipping their toes into ultra, but doubts themselves and doesn't do it, or doesn't believe in themselves, or doesn't try? Do you have any advice or tips for those who are maybe thinking about trying something new but just can't commit?
Well, I think that it's really normal. That doubt is normal, as we mentioned, across all athletes. And then the second thing is it doesn't have to be perfect. Like if you're trying it for the first time, there's no reason you need to go out and PR your half marathon. Actually, but if you tried it for the first time, it would be a PR. But there's no reason that it has to be this beautiful day. Just going out and learning and being on the trails and being with a great community is ultimately what matters in the end. And so that shouldn't stop anyone from trying.
Yeah. So yeah, in terms of like speed, it doesn't matter how fast someone is. I mean, like one thing that's great about trails, and like I promise everyone that's listening, if you win, and I mean, we coach a lot of the best athletes out there, and if you win the biggest race in the world, it doesn't improve your life any more than if you finish last or DNF or whatever. If anything, sometimes life for those people gets more complicated and difficult. And it's not. It's
you have these expectations to uphold. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when it comes to like let's say someone's going like in a distance or something like that, self-belief gets all back to these making it okay to fail, because if that permission isn't granted at the outset, self-belief is going to be proven wrong so many times over.
And you're never going to try, which is even more disappointing than failing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because like everything in life, you think about if you read any entrepreneur story, let's say, all of them, they had so many failures and disappointments along the way. But they were able to hold on to like their own self-worth through that process. So, we're usually not fans of this line of thinking, but in this one time with belief, we are, which is, so why do you believe at all? It's like, why not? It adds so much to the story to give yourself these opportunities to fail. And so, what we try to do with our athletes is be like, there's actually probably 15 people on the team this year that my goal for them this year was to fail, and to fail publicly, and to try to fail in ways that are like kind of creative and fun and interesting. And a lot of these are professional athletes who haven't had the adversity, because they've been so successful that they haven't had this adversity. And the thinking is, by removing the stigma of failure, there's, you open yourself up to so many new experiences. And so yeah, I mean, I think it all gets back to that, just that it's all good. It's all okay. It's like, it's life, but distilled down into a pretty fun little thumbnail that
also,
you can enjoy.
In running, it's kind of fun because essentially none of this stuff matters. So, going out and wrecking a half marathon, it's not going to matter in the grand scheme of the world. And that's really powerful to know too.
Yeah, it's always really hard to forget that this is fun. Like this, a lot of the times it's so easy to get wrapped up in the experience, the drama, the things that are going on between the ears. There's so many things that you can get wrapped up on, whether it's in real time, in the moment, or after the fact, or even before the fact, that can kind of divert you off your path. It's nice to be reminded constantly that the reality is none of it truly matters in the whole scheme of things, but really what you pull out of it, the experience, the memories, the laughter, the joy, the heartbreak, it's all part of it.
And even though it doesn't necessarily matter, it's still okay, and it's still really powerful to care.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't care, then nothing would have meaning. So it's like it's kind of an interesting circle.
Yeah, and to like in terms of like actually actualizing this stuff and making it happen. I mean, our "You Are Awesome" positive reinforcement stuff, it's really grounded in the field of positive psychology, where we're trying to stand in for the athlete, to get in their head over time, so that they have this thought that's repeating over and over again. So it becomes like their personal mantra, because it's really hard for a lot of people. So for people that are listening that might not have someone that's like on their shoulder telling them these things, and like over time, it's, affirmations work, things like that, really practicing loving yourself, and loving yourself in a way that is silly and not super self-serious. That those are really important things. So, you can, your affirmation, you can just say ridiculous things to yourself, but it can really work. And, it can distribute throughout your whole life. So yeah, like, I don't know. I'm sure people have really interesting affirmations on here, but ours. Oh,
No, never mind.
oh, she has a good joke coming. I know it. I know it.
This is marriage. When you know,
Yeah.
you know jokes.
She either farted or she has.
This one over here.
Jokes, right?
Yes.
But
But that's why you have a dog in the room. So
Yeah.
You're right.
No, there's
convenient
there's an
alibi.
extra layer. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
our,
notice how Kim picked up the dog at some point during the show. Sorry.
we encourage our athletes to, like, for ones that don't have it, be like, over time, go from I am enough to I am perfect. And that change the word over time from I am enough, which is like satisfaction, it gets to the idea, to no, I'm really, really great. And then over time get to this point, because none of these words have any meaning. We're just like, there's no such thing as enough. Everything's enough or nothing's enough. Like, it doesn't, the universe, like, there's no philosophical definition for it, nor is there for perfect, or anything like that. So you can decide your own definition. And all too often, like, we're, as people and runners especially, we're tempted to say that it is conditional, or we're not that ideal. We aren't the best runner out there. Or even if we, I guess the most interesting thing is some of the best runners out there are like, well, I could be better. Like, it never ends. So to step off that conveyor belt as much as humanly possible, which there are limits to that. But yeah, and make it as silly as possible. Silliness really helps.
The mantra "I am enough" is funny, because that's when in my acting life, that was one of the first things I learned when I was 19 years old in school. Was they teach you this in the program, like the drama program and all that sort of thing. When you go on auditions, when you meet people who are probably more successful than you, and you are putting yourself out there, the mantra that they teach you and pound into your head is that you are enough. You don't doubt that you have ability, that you have the potential to get the part or get the job. In this case, finish the race. Like, having that mantra that you are enough helped me a lot, actually, in the last 20 years. Just knowing it's so easy to doubt yourself, to doubt your abilities, doubt your training. Obviously, this is all kind of transitioned into running here, but it's really easy to go down that path. It's actually I feel like it's harder to reaffirm that you are enough, that you do have the ability. Like, it's so easy for your brain to just go, you're going to have a bad time, or you're not going to enjoy this, or you're not good enough, or you're not going to win, or you're not going to do this, as opposed to the opposite. It's interesting how that simple mantra, and I get what you were saying there, and transitioning that to I am great, or that elevation. But it certainly helped me a lot, and I don't know if that helps anybody.
The Terrell Owens, the old wide receiver for the 49ers and the Eagles and stuff. There's this old video of him lifting weights and just being like, "I love me some me." And I like that. I like athletes doing that. Be like, I love me some me, but then, like, I love everyone else too, and like try to, like, those positive emotions really are sustainable, and negative ones will, like, it's like the dark side will eat you alive. So yeah, it's all this stuff is, we're getting down to the core ish, like the human condition itself. That intersects with running, because runners are humans. I use a puppy, but and so yeah, I mean, it's such a difficult issue, and no one really has answers to this stuff. So when there's no answers, like, try to make it the answer that's kindest to yourself.
Kim has been so patient. There's been a ton of questions and comments in the chat room. So I am sorry, Kim. What do we got?
You should be sorry.
I am.
Question from Wing Taylor in the chat room. Wing asked, can you talk about how to balance the good and bad parts of ego? Can drive you to perform, but can also introduce negativity into competition and community.
I think really understanding why you're doing things and having it written down and clearly articulated before you're racing is helpful. So a lot of times for people that can be ego, but we really try to encourage people to think about reasons that are like internal and positive, so that when you hit mile 50 of 100, you can't thrive on ego. Like it has to come from something deeper than that. And just having that understanding can be helpful for fleshing those reasons out.
Yeah, or you can thrive on ego, but
I think temporarily. I don't think ego thrives forever. I think ego causes you to burn out.
Yeah. So what we say to athletes is, oh my gosh, what's the ratio called?
The Gen ratio. No, it's pronounced
Ren.
So you can Google it. It's WREN, but pronounced Gen.
Basically, it's like Confucius type stuff. So we're going down the rabbit hole here. I feel like everyone just fell asleep. But basically, it's the positivity you bring into the world over kind of like the self-centered type things you do, and you want the number as high as it can be. You want the numerator really high, the denominator as low as it can be. So for a runner, you do need some, like if we're going to say ego is in the denominator, you need some, because otherwise you're not getting out the door. But it doesn't have to be that high. Like, once you do reach the point that you're like, okay, I'm a runner, that's your identity, you don't need to think I'm the best runner or I want to be the best runner to reach your potential. In fact, that's probably negative. With running training, you don't want to be like, more is not better. The people that do like less smart are usually better off anyway. So you just need the bare minimum of ego, and getting back to the why and holding yourself accountable to your why can be really helpful for that.
Nice. Kim, what else we got?
Yeah, question from Nathan Tobin in the chat room. Nathan asks, what are the limitations to positive self-speak in endurance sports? Could there be unintentional drawbacks or discrete harms if we do away with valuing negative self-speak?
Well, it's not we're doing away with value altogether. It's just understanding the place in your broader psyche. So, I mean, the best place to talk to this is with a therapist or, a mental health professional. And we recommend therapy to almost everyone. But, the value, I guess by negative self-speak, we're talking about saying like, oh, well, I could have done better here and that'll drive me to improve or something like that. And so, when it comes to that, like, yeah, some personalities are motivated by that. I think for many, though, it's a slippery slope. So you can start with this really like, okay, I'm trying to improve my marathon time, and you're really focused on it, and it's not the negative self-speak that does come from it doesn't harm your sense of self-worth, who you are as a person. But the problem with running in particular, and a lot of the smart people that are in running, is that context over time can start to slip away. When that context does start to slip away, it's not just about running anymore. It becomes about who I am, who I am as a father, or whatever, and all these other factors about, the person. So, the amount of, like, I think the most eye-opening thing we've seen through coaching is just the amount of depression and anxiety and other things on the mental health spectrum that people deal with and are willingly adding to it through the way they conceive of their running. Because you can't avoid this stuff. It's not like an external thing. It's part of human nature. But you can try to develop mechanisms to like make it better. So yeah, if you chase splits a lot, if you do a lot of track workouts, there's a reason that like most collegiate runners, like a lot of collegiate runners, don't run after school. And it's because after a while, it becomes really hard to keep the discreteness between, I am not my 400-meter split on the last rep of that workout.
I also think that if you make enthusiasm and positivity a habit, it kind of starts to shift where you naturally fall on the spectrum of your worldview. And so everything starts to become just slightly more enthusiastic, slightly more positive. And then it becomes a habit over time and infectious. And so that's one of the reasons why why we encourage it so much in SWAP.
So I think before we move into the post show, because I know Kim's already pulled a bunch of additional questions aside, so I want to make sure that we get to all of those at least in the post show. Yeah. Something that I think will come up, something that's come up with people reaching out when they reach a point in an event. So let's say they do sign up for their first 50-mile, 100-mile, or first marathon, 5K, whatever it is. they will get to a point where their mind is telling them in the midst of it, you're going through a low, you're having a terrible time, you should just drop at the next aid station, or now's the time to stop completely. How do you deal with those moments in real time? How do you work on your mental toughness so you can kind of grind through these big events? All the guests we've had on the show, elite and other levels, they talk about, I ran and won this race. And I was like, well, what about the lows? How'd you get through the lows? And you often hear, you just got to push through. You just got to push through. And I'm like, that doesn't help. Do you have advice for your runners or for the live viewers?
I just think understanding that they're coming and knowing that they're always going to be there. So it's a spectrum. It's like it can be the lowest, most terrible low, or it can be a low. And just understanding that's part of racing and it's going to happen. And I think having a strategy for preparing for that ahead of time. So like having a very clear why as to why you're doing this race and why you need to get through this low is helpful. And then also just during that low period, really making a point to engage with other runners or engage with the community and kind of draw in some outside forces to help you come back from it.
Yeah, I think I totally like, we have our monkey brains, and inside our monkey brains we're like pain, let's say. Pain is a great example, like running up a hill. Everything tells you, screams at you to stop. But why do you actually have to stop? And delving into those thoughts. So like inside your own head, when you're going through the severe lows in a race, it can be impossible to continue. What Megan was getting at and what she said was you're talking to others, you're engaging with others to escape the world in between your own head. But you can also do that when you're solo, where you're like, okay, take a step outside myself. What am I actually experiencing right now? And really like delve into that. I love athletes doing, like, say, a hill repeat workout. Let's say like 5 by 2 minute hills. And the goal of the hill repeat workout is not training. The only goal is in the last minute of each rep to think about what you're feeling, not to dissociate from it, but to try to gain power over it outside your own head. And, I think a lot of elite athletes, what you're seeing there is that the elite athletes don't conceive of discomfort and low points in the same way that like I might or someone else might. They're able to understand just intuitively, naturally, or maybe they work at it really hard, that what might be considered a low point is actually just these, those physiological things that can be ignored or can be managed in a way that, gives them power. Like,
and maybe that's what's part of what makes them elite too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a skill just as much as, training is a skill,
For sure.
or running is a skill, or your running economy is good. It's, your ability to handle those moments.
So yeah, like Amelia's famous for this, like the Queen of Pain and things like that. To the point that like, I almost try to get it going. Like I talk to Amelia a lot about going the other way, where it's like, we want to actually be a lot more like present with our pain and like understand these low points and like embrace them, like, or not, like she's so good at ignoring them. But another example that just happened recently is Keely, who you guys had on recently, had a long run that didn't go quite as planned. She was traveling to China for work and then came back and did a long run. And I feel like her text back, I don't remember the exact words, but their text back to me was something along those lines that, woo, that was tough and that was terrible and that was really fun. And so in other words, like that's probably that is emblematic of how she would be in a race too.
Right.
And that you can practice that stuff. And
with the caveat of like, if you're peeing blood, if you're vomiting, if you're don't escape the world between your two ears. Like your brain's trying to tell you something, and you should probably
if your
stop.
why is you don't want to pee Coca-Cola.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely a line between I'm bonking or I'm going through a rough time and my body is my kidneys are dying. I think that line needs to be clear, of course, with the individual.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
coach, and then like your mantra, your beer.
Well, we're gonna wrap up the main show here. You guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on. And helping us get a little bit more insight into maybe some tools that we can use or just the things that we deal with as runners on a regular basis. All of us deal with. It's nice to know that, one, we're not alone. Elites in all levels definitely deal with this doubt and even just like race anxiety, that sort of thing. We really appreciate just the insight into a coach's look at to how to handle athletes who maybe suffer from some of these things. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Any final thoughts to runners who maybe would be looking to a coach like you guys that run into these sort of mental blocks, keeping them from doing things, staying and being great?
We all have front row seats to our own shortcomings, and like realize that those front row seats are not like, it's not that you have more or whatever. It's that, you just perceive them more, like almost like imposter syndrome on an individualized basis, or like in your own head. And so not only is that okay, that's totally normal. And if you don't have that, there's almost like, there's other issues there. So to embrace that stuff is part of what makes you who you are, because almost always that same like race anxiety or whatever that we're talking about, like maybe wanting to change, is the flip side of what makes you exceptional and what makes you you. So if you like put it to the side and say, this is not me, me is over here, you might actually be saying, oh, this me over here that I like and that is enough to you, you're almost throwing them aside too. So, love your flaws or like what you might perceive as your flaws as much as you possibly can. We'll love your flaws. Addie will love your flaws for sure. And like, understand that, you being enough isn't dependent on something like, I am enough if this. You're enough no matter what. And that includes like the whole kit and caboodle. Because if you throw away like the kit, you lose the caboodle.
And it's like those front row seats are like to a rock concert. Like there's like and people are doing amazing things, and it's actually kind of incredible how self-critical people can be during that process. And so just taking a second to look back and understand where you've come and what you've done. I
love it. David and Megan, can you remind people where they can find you on social? I have a feeling that we're going to get a lot of people that have residual questions, and where can they submit those?
Awesome. Well, Addie has an Instagram.
Yes.
That's the best place to see life wisdom.
She just heard her name.
She's back.
She's like, I'm famous.
But swaprunning.com is a good place where you can see our like contact info and things like, and also a little bit more on the philosophy end of it. And then just Google us.
Twitter.
Yeah. Just come to our house. Actually, we're in Boulder. Just come to our house.
Yeah.
Addie takes house calls.
I'm just throwing up on the screen now, swaprunning.com, right over Addie's face. But she's like, oh my God, I'm famous.
Oh,
whoa, there it is right there. Definitely go check it out if you have not already.
There's also lots of questions about the book.
Yes, that was the next thing, just before we wrap up the show. Book, tell us a bit about it. When's it coming? When's it happening? How's it going?
So it's called Happy Running. It's out. It's done now, but it's in the like kind of in between time where it's getting to print and stuff. So it'll probably be out August,
September.
I think. So we'll let everyone know, and maybe we can come in and like.
It'll be on Addie's Instagram.
Yeah.
She's a writer in the book, so
her
voice is in there.
Yeah, the all caps Addie did make the book as the comic relief. So
I was thinking it would just be like dog paws, just lines of dog. Thanks for laughing. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no. In that book, like we try to use our own stories of like the negative stuff as much as possible. Like, I mean, the only negative stories are our own. In other words, like we have a lot of negative stories on ourselves, including in some of the mental health stuff. Like,
we have a great mental health chapter in there. So.
Or just like on our own experiences and stuff. So in other words, like, no one has any answers. We don't have answers, but that's okay. And knowing that is like, it really gives you like great power.
Awesome. Love it, guys. Really, really appreciate it. David and Megan Roche joining us on tonight's episode of Ginger Runner Live, episode number 213. Yay! We've done a quickie question.
You're like sad
because I'm sad that the show was ending.
Okay,
I want to keep talking with them, which we will do in the post show. But of course, if you would like to join the post show and join David and Megan and us as well for a little bit after this show, and then every Monday after the show we talk with our guests for an additional 15, 20, 30 minutes, sometimes longer. You just go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get to participate in all of the post shows. So it's not a big commitment. It does help the channel. Every little bit helps. So if you have not already, consider it, and we would love to have you join the GR crew. So that's it for tonight's show. We are going to go into the post show with David and Megan here in just a couple of seconds. Am I forgetting anything?
Maybe just remind everybody that your movie is available to watch for free now.
If you have not already seen Where Dreams Go to Die, You can. You can go watch it right now here on this YouTube channel, which you're most likely watching this show on. But it is the video that I uploaded for free to the public last week. So it's online. It's available. Go watch it. It is a heartbreaking tale of Gary Robbins' 2 attempts at the Barkley Marathons in 2016 and 2017. It will inspire you to get out the door and try something hard. Speaking of mental health days, it's certainly it's one of those movies that you'll watch and you will want to try something that scares you and to dare the impossible. Gary has done it multiple times and goes back and still just tries and tries. It's heartbreaking, but it's powerful. I hope you get a chance to watch it and share it if you like it. If you have not already, there's also a bonus feature. I haven't talked about it much, but it's an additional hour and a half of Gary and I actually sitting down right here and watching the movie and talking all about what happens behind the scenes, scenes that we edited out, stories and that sort of stuff. It's an additional hour and a half of powerful footage talking with Gary about the movie, about the experiences. So if you would like to get that, you can do so at wheredreamsgotodie.com. There's a little link there that'll take you to the store. You can download it. So that is it. We're going to go into the post show with David and Megan here in just a couple of seconds. If you are a Patreon supporter, jump on over to the Patreon website, and we'll see you there in a couple of seconds. Otherwise, get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest.
Love you
I
guys.
am.
I know I am. See ya. Ginger runner.